Like I said earlier, welcome to another paperless webinar. This one is on the ROI, and it's kind of funny. When I was thinking about doing a session, ROI popped in my head, and then the next thing that popped in my head was my dad mostly, but both of my parents saying, "Do you think money grows on trees?" Right? And I think maybe a lot of us have heard that statement. Money doesn't grow on trees, right? And I'm thinking, you know what, if you have a software application that could actually, give you or save you time, save you money, it literally is like your money tree. I mean, where you're actually producing money from the proverbial money tree. So I kind of was having a little fun with that. And it's really true. I mean, if you think about some of the things that software can do for us today, it is saving us time. It's making us more competitive, giving us an advantage over our customers. It's allowing us to, reduce our inventories, reduce our scrap, increase our utilization of our people, of our machines, our material. All of those things can come out of software if it's used effectively, right? Then you think about even where the world is going these days, and AI, right? AI is taking that software application to the next level. It's taking all the information that has been captured and also now allowing the software to make decisions and make adjustments for you without any humans being involved. So it's really it is coming a long way, and maybe even going down to the path of manufacturers. When you think about automation, right? Automation is that robot or that machine or conveyor belt or AGV, automatic guided vehicle, that allows you to move material around your floor or automatically produce parts for you, et cetera. Those are kind of money-making machines because obviously you pay for them once up front, but they just run and run and run, and over time they're saving you other costs. And when I say costs, I'm not always thinking about reducing overhead. Today's world, it's tough to find people, right? At least that's what a lot of my customers are telling me, is finding people and keeping people is really, really difficult. So in lieu of that, I mean, we're kind of being forced down this path of trying to do more with less, right? And some of the choices that we're making is to say, all right, since I don't have a material handler that I can't find, maybe I have to have some type of automated guided vehicle put in so that I can actually move material around. Or maybe I can't find an operator for a machine, and now I need to actually have a robot, put parts on that inside that CNC machine to manufacture things. So all those things are kind of driving us to say, all right, you know what other tools are out there? So MES and like other things, before you buy something, you want to justify it, right? And that's where the return on investment comes from. I don't have time to go through all the different types of return on investments that you can gather from an MES solution. So I kind of just picked a couple of good examples, tied in some customer quotes for the examples that I have. And there's a lot of them out there as well. And each customer is different depending on, what their needs are and what their pains or current issues are. So the four I chose is paper. That's kind of where we started at Paperless, is trying to reduce the amount of paper on the floor, making things real time, communicate things, etc. Second one is just improving processes, ROI over processes. And then ROI for machines. When I talk about machines, I'm not saying that you're going to buy a new machine, but maybe utilize the machines that you currently have. And that could be a CNC machine, like I mentioned earlier. That could be an oven. That could be, any type of machine that you currently have, making sure that it's utilized to its maximum or its full capacity. And then lastly, I threw out one out there, inventory, kind of thinking that this covers a lot of different cases that I've heard, over the last year or 5 years or 10 years even. So let's kind of roll into the example for paperless, or excuse me, paper. One of the first examples I'm thinking about paper is that obviously you have to print it out, right? So there's obviously labor involved in printing that paper out, preparing the shop packets. A lot of people have shop packets. In fact, I just got off a call at 10 o'clock my time, so about an hour ago, with a potential customer, and one of their biggest issues that they have is generating this shop packet or this traveler. They had to assemble a number of different elements to put inside of that shop packet. And they'd put a print in there, they would put work instructions in there, they put quality inspection and instructions. They put setup instructions. They'd have to print out their labor cards and things like that. All of these things are individually printed and assembled. And then, not only that, but then there's also labor time incurred for not only printing it out, but also for assembling it, as well as distributing it. I've got to take it out to the floor to the supervisor, and the supervisor has to take that out to the operator. I'm not going to get into the historical kind of perspective of saying that once it's printed, it's out of date, it's history, right? So if there's any ever changes, you have to times this by not quite 2, but times it by 0.5 to say, all right, I've got to go grab the existing shop packet, take the information out of the shop packet, and replace it with the new information. Then you've got your kind of, I would say, maybe hard costs, right? Your hard costs are the printer itself, the ink, the paper itself, those are all my types of hard costs. Kind of mentioned changes. Those are changes not only to the shop packet, but also changes to your printing functionality, which means that maybe, we just got a new copier here that we print on, right? So that's obviously a cost to take the old one out, put the new one in. Obviously maintaining the ink cartridges and maintaining the hopper to make sure I have enough paper in there at all times, etc. Those are all things that are kind of changing. So you can come up with a formula, right? That, says obviously I'm going to take my cartridge price and my page, how many pages per cartridge or can I print, the actual paper cost itself, and then come up with kind of my overall kind of cost from perspective. And again, this is just, the cost of printing, not necessarily the cost of labor, but I guess labor is included there as well. Talking with one of our customers, we kind of did some analysis with them, and they did some analysis on their own, and they actually reduced the amount of paper that they were printing by 28,000 pieces. And that was on a yearly basis, right? So this is not only just a one-time, but it's recurring. So if you kind of take, that formula I was kind of talking about earlier and put your costs in there, and obviously with inflation, paper cost is increasing, just like labor cost is increasing and everything else is, right? The printing cost is, anywhere from $2,400 to $4,000. And this analysis was done pre-COVID. So you think about the cost now, this is actually probably a lot higher than what it was. The labor cost for the actual person to actually print it out, it was almost a full-time person that was managing the printing and assembling of these shop packets out there on the floor. That was about $30,000. So if you're looking there, you've got about anywhere from $32,000 to $34,000 on a yearly basis that you're saving. So you think about, again, that money printing, or excuse me, that tree that's growing money, right? You think about this tree, every year it's paying you back $32,000 to $34,000 just by reducing the amount of paper. And that's from a true interactive MES solution like our Mv2 application. Trail King was actually the customer that actually did this, and this is what I actually had them do: reduce their overhead, reduce that amount of paper like I just told you, and then the processing time to actually assemble it by 83%. Some great numbers, and again, this is a recurring kind of theme, recurring kind of payback that you're going to get from it. Another customer quote, they actually reduced theirs by $135,000. So that is both labor and materials on an annual basis. So thinking about paying for things over and over again, this money tree is really producing a lot of good things, right? I'm gonna walk through another example, and this one's actually a little bit of video that you can actually watch right now. And it should be playing in about 2 or 3 seconds. It's from a customer of ours, Sub-Zero, that did some analysis.
I know when we were talking about going from their MDCC traditional system over to MES, we talked about return on investment, and I know you had some ideas at that point of goals that you had. Can you share any information about ROI?
Yeah, definitely. So as part of this project, we did track. So we had 3 main goals to track. One, the biggest reason for this was eliminating operator error. So operators, there was nothing that they were using before to really tell them you know, what MO they were working on other than a piece of paper. If they forgot that, you know, they'd have to go back. So we wanted to get all this information in one area, primarily to reduce errors. And we tracked that across prior to the implementation as well as several months after. And what we found is during that time, of all the operator reports, we found about 2% of them had to be adjusted, which that's not a huge percentage, but when you look at the volume of around 6,000 to 10,000 reports by the operators per month per plant, that accounts to a lot. And we were able to reduce that 2% down to 0.1%. solely because of the implementation of this MES system, because it is the one-stop shop, it's live data, it's right there. And it's, you know, there's a big spike, of course, right when you implement, but I mean, those numbers, that 2% down to 0.1%, if you think of the volume of the MOs on that, each of those fixes, it's not just going in and fixing the MO, it's the time spent somebody figuring out that else did something wrong, figuring out what they did, communicating that, and then finally you get to the execution of fixing that adjustment. So being able to remove all of that time frame, it's just, it was a huge benefit. The other thing we measured, again, like I mentioned, is the amount of MOs that we were able to work on. So we went from around 6,000 MOs to 10,000 MOs a month. I can't say that was because of the MES, but it's because we were ramping up production. However, we were able to almost double the amount of fabrication that we were doing, while at the same time reducing the amount of errors. So both of those things coming together, increase in volume, reduction in errors, was just, it was an enormous benefit. And again, those are real numbers that I was able to pull out, you know, and record each month for our fabrication.
That's a great statement from Maya. In fact, actually, after he did this recording for us, kind of dove in a little deeper regarding his statement regarding going from 6,000 MOs to 10,000 MOs. Obviously, MES wasn't the only factor in that, as he stated. He said it wasn't wasn't the only factor. There was other things that happened as well, but MES was definitely a part of that. So we want to just take some of those numbers that Maya just explained, right? They had about 6,000 transactions per month when they first started with the application. They had 2% errors of those transactions. If you do the math, obviously that's about 120 errors that they're receiving per month that they had to do corrections on. Kind of just did a very conservative estimate to say, all right, how long does it take to find the error, figure out what's wrong with it, and then make the correction? It's about 10 minutes, and that's really, really, really conservative. It's probably more than that time, because you think about, you have got to go and talk, find out what the MO was, who worked on it, is that person here, track them down to find out, and they have to jog their memory to say, all right, did I really produce 3 pieces, or really was it 5 pieces, etc. Right? So just 10 minutes on a conservative standpoint. And do the math, that's about 20 hours per month that they were spending on correcting errors, just errors alone, right? And this was just for the starts and stops of activity and piece reporting of activities. So with MES, like he stated, he took that 2% and actually drove it down to 0.1%, so 0.1%, which says that, all right, if I take those 20 hours that were being spent per month, that reduced my number of hours from 20 hours down to 1 hour. So basically, you're saving 19 hours per month for just reducing errors. And this was on a very small subset of what the MES application can do, because they just rolled out some of the initial stuff for job reporting and finished goods reporting. So they were getting 19 hours per month savings just from MES in the initial implementation. And like he said, he went from 6,000 parts, or excuse me, 6,000 MOs up to 10,000 MOs. And you do the math there, he actually probably, I think it's about 32 hours of savings. So not rather than 19 hours a month, they went to 32 hours a month. And think what you can do with that time, not only for the individuals that has to monitor and make the corrections, but all the individuals that are involved, right? On the front end as well as on the back end. It's a huge savings. Obviously, you can apply your own hourly wage there to figure out the dollar value of that as well. Some other customer statements that we had kind of revolving around air reduction is, Everbright, where they actually reduced their data entry time and reduced their errors by 66%. Obviously, the information is always real time and accurate. Another example I did, this is for a prospect, is they had an issue with reporting production receipt, the RM transactions, where they're actually producing finished goods and reporting those. They had a process where they'd write the information down on a card, they'd collect all those cards up, they review them and make any corrections of that information, enter that information into a spreadsheet in Excel information. Then they would actually communicate that to somebody else or two people sometimes. And then that person would then take the information from the spreadsheet and actually create the actual production receipt for that finished good that was reported. Now, these are other things that are obviously kind of introduced to the application because of all of the steps here. It's obviously, potential for error is just, increase at every step. I mean, every time you put something in, your potential of typing wrong or someone reading it wrong, if they have bad handwriting, etc. Obviously, the time spent gathering it, the time spent entering all that information. Obviously, they had to enter it 3 times, and then communication is just a big delay, because of all these different steps. So we kind of said, all right, let's apply MES here. What it would look like when and if MES is being used to do this process, right? Well, before I do that, I'm just going to kind of put an hour, and we did this kind of together to say this was kind of an estimate of each step of the process. You look at these, they're small, 0.5 hours, right? To communicate, the RMs a quarter of an hour, so 15 minutes, right? All very, very short tasks, but you add these up, they add up to something substantial. That's 3.5 hours, right, of work every single day that people are spending to do this, right? So now kind of applying MES, what does it look like, right? I'll do some math here first, right? You take that math and you times it by dollars, and again, a conservative estimate here on an hourly wage, and that hourly wage is overhead as well. That's insurance and everything else included. So basically, you're looking at spending about $36,000 a year for just this process. Now, apply MES with MES, right? Basically, you eliminate that writing of information down. It happens automatically, right? Collecting that information, people walking out on the floor, collecting those cards, etc. Reviewing it and correcting it. Obviously, you still need to do that. Maybe someone needs to review it, although there's validation at the point of entry. So part of that review is done automatically. Communicating that around the company is removed, and then the entering it again is also removed. So you've taken those 3.5 hours down to a half hour a day for potential reviewing some information for production receipts up on the floor. And then you kind of apply that to the dollar value that I said, right? Where you had before, you had that $36,000 a year with MES. You've taken it from 3.5 hours down to 0.5 hours. Obviously, do the math again. It's coming up with about $100 per week. I'll do this quick. You don't have to watch the math too much. But basically, now it's costing about $5,000 a year. So you're saving about $31,000 a year just by one simple process within MES of saying I can automatically do the production receipts of finished goods and not have to have all this paperwork and reviewing and double and triple data entry events, etc. Another quote from a customer, obviously, just reducing their number of errors per week, and they had payback within the application in about 6 months. It's a super fast payback for probably any software or machine or robot or conveyor belt or AGV or something like that. The next one I want to go through is machines, right? And a good story for machines here is saying that I had a customer that had a machine that was producing 9 million parts, or excuse me, 9 million pounds of material through it every single year. And this machine was scheduled to run 3 shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the recommendation by the operator and the supervisor and even the plant manager says, all right, we need to buy another machine because we cannot keep up with the demand of our customers for this machine. It's tapped out because we're running, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, etc. So what they did is we said, all right, and actually they did this on their own. Again, this is where MES can help bring insight to this. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I lost my other bullets, guys. I apologize. I have bullets here, and I don't know where they went. 1 second. Here we go. Actually, sorry, I'll go this route. Little glitch there. This is their machine setup, right? So on their machine, they got a conveyor belt that's automatically can be loaded. They've got a robot loading the CNC machine. They got downtime that's being reported here, and then downtime that's coming up on a big monitor on the wall. So what we did, we said, well, let's monitor downtime. How much is that machine going down? Is it truly available, 24 hours a day? Is it being utilized 24 hours a day? Right. And then there were some Kaizen events when we found out that it was not being utilized 24 hours a day to say, how can we reduce the amount of downtime? It was jamming because chips were getting stuck into the machine and it had to be opened up and cleared out. And so there's a lot of things that can be done over time to reduce the amount of downtime that was occurring on this machine. And again, they did a lot of this even prior to MES, but MES can bring insight into that, right? That you can easily see how long that machine was down and why it's down, et cetera. Well, what they did, they actually, after about 4 or 5 years, they reduced the amount of downtime for that machine so that rather than producing 9 million pounds of aluminum per year, it actually now increased to 16 million pounds of aluminum per year. That's almost double. And again, you think about the cost saving here. From a machine standpoint, they did not have to, buy a new machine, right? They didn't have to, install it, which is obviously a cost. They didn't have to have new operators to man this machine. They didn't have to have new material handlers to bring material over to this machine, et cetera. So there's a lot of cost savings that was found just by analyzing downtime, and MES can help identify that downtime and understand where it is and help you improve on it. The last one is inventory, and just real quickly here, looking at my time, inventory here, I always ask the question to people saying that if you can do 1% improvement, right? And just on anything, whether that's in your work life or your personal life, it's like, yeah, can I eat 1% better today? Could I do 1% more activity? Heck yeah, I can, right? That's pretty simple. So let's apply that to manufacturing and say, all right, I can improve my inventory accuracy by 1%, right? Or my on-hand inventory, can I decrease it by 1%, right? So my carrying cost is down, right? So if I just say I have $1 million of on-hand inventory, if I improve that by 1%, that's an annual savings of $10,000, right? And then you can even put in there labor. If I can improve my cycle counts and physical inventories and maybe movements of materials and things like that by 1% by knowing where material is, having confidence in the accuracy of my inventory, and maybe draws me to say that I don't have to do physicals, or I can do less cycle counts for certain items, et cetera. Those are all ways to actually get payback on an MES system that gives you real-time inventory. So you know exactly what you have on hand, when you actually consume it, et cetera, et cetera. Dexter Laundry has had a great statement for us. They saved about $250,000 just in their physical inventory processes, which is just huge number, right? That pays for a lot of software, pays for some new machines and new people, et cetera, et cetera. Another quote from another customer, their inventory accuracy was improved. Their time reporting was cut by 50%. So as you can see, again, I don't have time to go through a lot of or all of the things that MES can help with, but because I didn't even touch on scrap. And we all know scrap is one of the biggest waste of dollars in a business, right? I mean, not only for the parts that I'm buying, but also the parts that I'm producing. And then we don't even know the soft cost of that, which is what effect does that have on my business, my customer satisfaction. That's what I'm talking about. Are they willing to buy from you again? Are they looking for a new vendor because your scrap has gone up? And so there's a lot of other things that you can talk about from an MES standpoint where it can help you get that ROI. So kind of looking at like kind of direct kind of costs, like paper, process, machines, inventory, those are things I talked about. And then what about the indirect ones, right? You've got efficiency, you have productivities that are improving. When I talk about like efficiencies and productivities, rather than writing something down on a piece of paper and having someone pick it up and then type it into a system, you can do that all through online. What's the time saving, not only for the person writing it on a piece of paper, but also for someone collecting it and entering that stuff in? Your decision making is improved. We talked about that downtime situation. If I know when a machine is down, I can react to it right now rather than having to wait until the end of the year when I do some historical analysis to figure out how much downtime was incurred across all my machines. Or maybe another decision-making process to say that a job is running slower than what's expected. And I want to actually address that right now rather than address it tomorrow morning in my production status meeting where I figure out what went wrong yesterday, right? And then you can take it outside your business and say, my customer satisfaction is impacted by this. New business is impacted by this as well. I mean, if I'm tapped out for what I can produce, but now I've improved my throughput based on some of the things we talked about, now I can maybe sign up new business as well. Well, I thank you all for joining our webinar today. The next webinar is next week, not next week, but June 5th at 11:30 Central Standard Time. And we're going to be talking about our mobile inventory control application and that. So if there's no questions, I will bid you a great day and farewell.